Hi everyone, welcome to the day 10 of Revenue Cash Shippeton. We are almost one fourth done with the hackathon, and it feels like I am adding more features to features. And for each day, I'm adding like one to two features of like fixing a few bugs. But when I look back, they are just adding up. Like I have like 20 features if I have to count each single one of them. And as I mentioned in the previous video about the translation framework, I was able to, like, the first thing I did in the morning was like nail it down. So let me show how that went. So now I created a as I mentioned, I created a separate page for it, and now I added this translate option. So let's say if I translate all the names, because the names are coming from my backend, I created it's not a backend, it is just a JSON file that is hosted on GitHub. So the names are like generated on the fly. So when I add more of the templates, the names will change. So I cannot use localization for it, because for localization I will have to submit a new app for review. But this is like on the fly and I can change at any time. So when I do the translation for, let's say, Korean, you see that I use a beautiful text render effect that will give me the translation back, and then I can change it to, let's say, Japanese. You'll see that it flies away and then it will slowly come back and fill the screen. Getting this feature done wasn't a hassle because I've already worked with the text render a few days ago while I was exploring the meshing onboarding that I spent so much time on. And I have already worked on the translate framework, like learned the ins and out of it when I was working on the lyrics link app. So it feels funny that I am like kind of changing or exchanging code from both the apps, even though like they're completely different domains. One is a music app for lyrics and one is a gradient app for designers. The second feature that I worked on for today was adding a blur. This was mentioned by someone on Twitter as a feedback that you can make the animation more subtle by adding a blur. So that's what I did. It starts with a blur on for like with the size of 10, and if you can see that right now it is kind of clipped. So I would go back to the code, and I feel like my phone does not have the latest one, so I would go and run my project again on my phones just to make sure that I have the latest one to show you. And in the meanwhile, I can show you that there has been some difficulties running Xcode Cloud for some reason. All my builds were failing with an error that let's see what's the error. On iOS, I think this one was performing badly. That the error was that exporting for App Store distribution failed. Please download the logs artifact for more information. And it did not give me anything significant. Like I just could not understand what's happening. So I went to Stack Overflow and found an option that just nuke all the certificates and let Xcode Cloud do it again. And that actually worked. Even though it says that there's a cross, the iOS version did ship. So that's how software works, right? And so while I was talking about Xcode Cloud, looks like I have the new build running on my phone, and I I feel like the Xcode has slowed down on my Mac. Like I know my Mac needs a battery replacement. It has been like 3 years now, but it just feels much slower running any Xcode beta because it's much faster on my Mac Mini, which is M2 Pro, and my MacBook is M1 Pro, and it shouldn't make this much of a difference. But anyway, we were talking about the blur. The main change was in the blur, I added a clipped. Earlier, it wasn't clipping, so it like the blur was going outside of the mesh gradient itself, and I did not like that effect, so I kind of clipped it. So when I animate it now, let's take the blur a bit to 10, and let's use it for a 4x4 grid, and then we'll use one of the available templates. We use Aurora Borealis and then try to animate it. We see we are getting kind of a much more subtle animation compared to what we had earlier. And if I lower the blur more. I can see, even though I'm not getting the sharp tangents that I used to love, I am happy with this blur effect that's I'm getting on the screen. And yep, that was the a nice quality of improvement that I added under appearance. And there was three things that I worked on. Oh yes, the last one was working with creating this like a quick win, like a gradient of the day. So I am giving a presentation in Korea on at hello KWTC, and my topic is widgets everywhere and not a pixel to spare. And this I have already presented this last November as the opening talk at Duo iOS Amsterdam. At that time, the talk was more on the interactive widgets in iOS 17, but this time I will also talk about the control center widgets and the live activities, and most importantly, app intents, because I feel like it is the AI for us developers. And let's just try to kind of configure it. It's opening the widget again. How do I like double click and get it to configure? I'm not sure if I can do it on the Mac. On the iPhone mirroring, maybe it is a privacy issue. Yep, never mind. But it looks like really beautiful. Like the idea is that I have a configurable widget that gives me the option of like choosing a random templates that change every single day, or like a 2x2x for a more simplified effect, like a linear gradient, a 3x3, which is this one, and a 4x4, which is the aurora borealis. Like one of them was that you have already seen. So with that, I was kind of tired the whole day because I worked out too much yesterday, so I did not implement, like I did not go all in off on what I wanted. There were two more things that I wanted to accomplish today. One was like finishing the onboarding, which is being it's stuck. And the second was creating a dot meshing file. So Yash mentioned on Twitter, like let's say instead of exporting, you can export the project as a mesh gradient when you copy the code or like share it with someone. But what if you added an option to import the code? Let's say if there's a designer one that wants to share their mesh gradient to designer 2, and they can just import it into the app. So I can share a dot meshing file that has the mesh gradient. It has all the configurations. So if I show you the app, it has the configuration for, is it animating, is it like showing the labels, has it added the blur, is it smooth the color. So the idea is that it's a whole configuration file that kind of, let's say, a Figma sketch file that you can just import and export. And that had also given me an idea that I can create a meshing community where like people, like-minded people who want to share their beautiful gradients can go all berserk and then just have their own account, share it, like a whole social media that is just around mesh gradients. That's a wild fetch, like a far-fetched thing, but let's see if I can get it done during the ship it in itself. And with that, I hope you are having a good day and see you tomorrow.